Shall we talk about championing the client, which is competency 5? I really love this competency. And we talk about it as that high support element in coaching, but just the word championing really sort of brings to life that, I am here for you, I believe in you, and that sense of they're probably not getting that in many places in their lives, that real positive, head in your corner. I've got you with this, and I'm here to support you through this. And it's really interesting, isn't it? Because when you work as a tutor on the programme, so many people have a view of what they think championing is in coaching. And it's always very much around, you're great. Yeah, you're, and it's that sort of, no, that's not championing. And actually, when we do the observed practice, that tends to be one of the areas that we don't get to see very often.
Yeah.
And so it's that real rich understanding of, no, what we mean is really helping to highlight your client's strengths to bring about that robustness to feed into and face into some of those areas of stretch. And that's what we mean by championing, rather than, yay, way to go, you're great, And that sounds like a great idea, but it's really sort of, I can feel your values coming out in you there, and you're really leading into that. It feels so powerful. Imagine, and you can really get them into that space. And I think, when we think about the high support, high challenge, and we'll talk about that in another video, you almost, if you get your championing right, the permission
It's already
to stretch and to challenge is there, it's a given in any relationship, but importantly also in the coaching relationship.
Yeah, I just think it's when you're talking about as people are training to do this, is there quite often people are like, oh, it feels really awkward, I feel silly, or it's not natural. And I'm like, focus on what you're actually seeing in front of you. So you are seeing someone, be critical of themselves, or willing to explore or challenge themselves, and that's something to be celebrated and championed, is to say, what are they doing in front of you? And then when they actually see how that can really help somebody to continue down that path, I think so. It's kind of the finding the why in a way, rather than I feel awkward about this. It's kind of like, but what does it give the client by pointing out to them, like you say? And when you're doing this self-awareness, and it can often be, as you said earlier, like emotional, it can be challenging, and if someone's willing to do that, then you should champion them.
This is not easy. This one feels a bit like the listening competency to me, in that it doesn't feel like an everyday behaviour. Maybe questioning or challenging feel like normal daily behaviours, whereas consciously applying positive psychology to a client, not by being nice, but by consciously acknowledging strength or impact on you or impact on others, isn't an everyday conversation that you don't have. So it feels as though it's something that, again, we might need to contract around. I'm just going to actually take a moment to notice something. This is why I'm doing it. This is the impact it can have on you. So that the client receives it in the right intention. Could be quite interesting.
And I suppose it's why we bring a couple of tools and techniques to intentionally do that. So the At Your Best model that we use is a really simple way of encouraging a client to think about the strengths that they bring when they're at their best, how they thrive when they thrive, why they thrive, what happens when they're thriving. It's dead simple, but something that doesn't happen without intention, which is why we have that, I suppose, as part of the program, one of the tools. And then if you think about that sweet spot of something you're really good at and you really enjoy, that energizing strength, we've got the tools to allow a conversation to unfold in a coaching session where you're being intentional about, this is something I'm really good at and I really enjoy. Okay, how are you using that strength? When are you using that strength? The kinds of conversations that probably wouldn't happen without being intentional about it.
Exactly. It's interesting from an internal coaching perspective. I think this is probably maybe easier but not always done, is calling out in coaching when you have seen something in practice. I know you last time you said you wanted to practice this, and you know, I observed you at a meeting, and that had this impact on me. I think that's it's sort of easier to do in the internal coaching space than in the
because you've got more.
But I've never seen people do it, or competency analysis. I very rarely see people say, and I've observed you in this space. It's almost like a permission to go beyond non-directive coaching into, and I see it, and this is the impact, and I just wanted to share it with you.
Yeah,
It's almost like a permission to do it.
Yeah, and I wonder whether there's almost a bit of an assumption that people know what they're good at. So you know you're good at that, don't you? I don't have to point it out to you. But actually, they may or may not know. And what you're doing is encouraging that reflection and that insight in the other person, that either they might think, oh, yeah, I'm quite good at that, or I've never really thought about myself being good in that space. Either way, drawing attention to it is not going to be harmful. It's going to be helpful in most circumstances.
Sorry, I find often with the client, a little bit like with the powerful questions, it's not that you have to keep coming up with something new. Yeah. So I sometimes find that, and I check in with the client, I'm like, has that championing landed? They really accepting that is something they're doing well, that is a strength. And I sort of talk about like a solid platform that they're trying to build from. And therefore then if we've got that, then they can tackle whatever it is that they maybe want to change or work on. But you've got to be able to accept that, yeah, I'm good at that. And that's the thing that I'm doing well. Yeah. And I find that there does need to be maybe some repetitiveness or actually calling out, you know, are you actually hearing, you know, what I just said?
We're pushing against evolution, aren't we? Yeah. We're wired to look at nothing to a need to fix. Being told of the things that we're good at doesn't save us. You know, drains. So we're looking for the show you that. Yeah, but you might have told me 5 really good things, but that one thing you said is the thing I'm going to go home and ruminate about. So actually, just the very act of coaching and bringing the balance of the high support and then the challenge when it's needed is a real sort of 180 to what you get in everyday life. So for many clients, it is really hard. I mean, how many session ones do we do with a sponsor in the room, and the sponsor talks so eloquently about how brilliant stress and this is and the impact that they have, and the person is red or they can't look anyone in the eye. You know, you check, you know, how did that feel? Really uncomfortable. Because we're not wired to sit in the space of, yeah, we're really good at that. Really good at that.
But I also think it's a real skill in the delivery of championing.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a risk that we come at it from a very nurturing parent perspective, which then places the client in that red, embarrassed child space. Whereas actually we're trying to champion from a position of adult. And I think that's a really skillful place to be, which enables the person to receive it in the right way, with the right intention, to accept it, to work with it. So there's a real tension with this competency and the competencies around challenge, that we move into those parental spaces as coaches, and we have to hold the position of adult.
Yeah.
It's a real skill, I think.
Yeah, agreed. So there's something, isn't there, about this around being intentional with it, but holding the adult space, using strengths as a way of drawing attention for the other person to notice the strengths that they're bringing when they thrive. But I think there is something in kind of encouraging repetition and encouraging them to really own those strengths and not just dismiss them, which is really helpful. The point you made about that session 1 and people feeling uncomfortable, I get that in the 360 when we do the 360 feedback, and you've got all those brilliant strengths and actually getting somebody to say them out loud.
Tell me what.
And they really just like don't want to. I don't want to say.
Or less of.
Yeah, and I suppose we all have a bit of that in ourselves, don't we? It just feels a bit uncomfortable when somebody pays you a compliment and you're like, oh, this old thing, or, well, no, I'm not really very good at that. Oh, yeah, I suppose I might be quite good at that. We know in ourselves how difficult it is. So for our clients, it's how do we, as you say, in an adult way, encourage that reflection.
And for me, it's the self-acceptance piece. I think if you cannot get that place of both strength and challenge in the adult environment, trying to move to innate confidence or leadership confidence, it is fragile. We've missed
you haven't got that foundation. It's because you're right. If you're and I often say with clients is if you're willing to accept that you've got some things that are opportunities or things you want to work on, then you must be able to accept that there are things that are good and that are your strengths, and that you've got they both must be true, aren't and that quite often can start to bring a bit of understanding around. Okay, it's okay to accept that there are some things that I am good at, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah. So I suppose with this competency, again, in the way we put listening and questions together, we put championing and feedback and challenge together, because high support and high challenge are the fundamentals of this being coaching and not just a cozy chat. So there's something around the intention and drawing attention on behalf of our clients and helping them to really recognise their strengths, because that strong foundation allows them to then attend to what they need to be fixed or where they want to move forward. And I think what we're saying here is that it needs to be from an adult's perspective, getting them to own that, but us to hold that adult space. It's not nurturing, it's adult ownership of your strengths. And within the program, we equip you as coaches with tools to do that in a way that's really helpful for your clients. And championing isn't just about saying you're great, it's about the client themselves owning specifically what are those strengths that they're bringing that are going to help them as leaders or help them just to move forward with their goals.
Yeah, super.